Hello, everybody. It's your friendly digital technology librarian, Christy here. We've reached another Friday, so of course, I have another Film Rec Friday ready for everybody out there. Now, this coming Tuesday is Valentine's Day, and I love a good romance as much as the next person, but I thought this year we might take a slightly different approach, and rather than doing your sort of standard person A meets person B equals happily ever after, Hallmark style happiness, we might try something just a little bit off the beaten path. I mean, don't get me wrong, we are still going to cover movies that have as many fantastic romantic tropes as ever, but these ones might have a little something different added into the mix. Maybe it's magical time traveling mailboxes, or perhaps a monster apocalypse. Those are just a couple of things off the top of my head. But in any case, these recommendations, as always, will be entirely for free with the use of your Milan-Berlin library card. And hopefully one of them will catch your interest. So if you are looking forward to watching a romance that has, just a little bit of flair, stay tuned. We're going to be getting into some really interesting films. So with that, I'm going to jump right in to the recs. Okay, so my first recommendation is available on DVD and Blu-ray through our CleveNet services, and that is 2020's Love and Monsters. This movie is so much fun. It's perfect for people who like the idea of a romantic film but are more interested in something with a lot of action, a lot of forward momentum, and really good pacing. It's also just in general a really, really fun movie to watch. So in Love and Monsters, we are following Joel Dawson, played by Dylan O'Brien of Teen Wolf fame. And Joel is traversing this post-monster apocalypse landscape in order to get to his long-lost high school love. It's been around 7 years since he last saw her. They're, very much adults at this point, but, they've been really super isolated. There was this weird monster-centric apocalypse that happened, and the two never saw each other ever again after that, and discovered they survived, but were separated by miles and miles of monster-populated landscape, and it was just not feasible for them to get together, especially at the beginning. So Joel starts out the movie as this pretty mild, super duper nerdy, basic survivor. He has very few skills. He's not brave. He's not super competent as far as it goes, as far as survival skills go or anything. He just happens to get really, really lucky, right? But as the movie goes forward and we follow him on this journey to get to his girlfriend, we see him really, really grow. In addition to seeing him sort of come of age on screen, and it is definitely a very late coming of age situation, we also see him meet up with other survivors, and some of the survivors are just absolutely fabulous. One is played by Michael Rooker, who is just a phenomenal, phenomenal character actor, and I adore him in absolutely everything he's in. And he's just delightful on screen. It's Rooker and O'Brien, and then a young girl who all have phenomenal chemistry together. It's just, they're a riot to see amongst one another. And then there's also a dog in the movie, and I love that sort of attachment we get to animals in situations where people are fighting for their lives. Like these post-apocalyptic films, they always, watching people have relationships with these animals definitely adds another nuance and adds another layer to any kind of storytelling. And on top of all of that sort of character growth and relationship development, you also have some pretty awesome monsters. They're not gross or gruesome, but they're really well done, and they're visually pretty awesome, I think. The artwork is really great that goes into putting them together. There's this gross, slimy, amphibian style monster, and then there's a really quite terrifying centipede kind of thing. I mean, they're awesome. So if you like monster movies, this is a really great one to watch. And of course you do have this long running love story going on throughout the film, he's sort of composing these journal entries, which are kind of like letters to her in his head. And you really get the sense that the idea of her, at the very least, has kept him sane and together over the years. And that's a big deal, because it would be very, very easy to slip into a not so sane mind frame in a post-apocalyptic world. But yeah, it's just delightfully fun. And it's not, your standard young love. It's not like two people just randomly meet and they get together and they have some coffee and then it's flashbang happily ever after. No, like it's weird and it's wacky and it's funny and fun and exciting. And there are monsters. Like, who doesn't want a movie with both love and monsters? Shout out to the title. So yeah, if you are looking for a love story that does have all of these other elements to it, and I would say, like, the bonds of friendship and family are as relevant in this film as the romances, definitely check this out. Again, Love and Monsters, available on DVD and Blu-ray through our CleveNet service. Okay, so second recommendation is available via Hoopla, and that is 2000's Il Mare. Now, I know the title sounds Italian, but it is actually a South Korean film, so yes, there are English subtitles, but as I say every time I recommend a foreign language film, totally worth the subtitles. This one's a really, really great film. This one is definitely more dramatic than, say, Love and Monsters, but there is a little extra element added to it, and I'll get to that in just a moment. So in Il Mare, we are following an architect named Sung-hyun, who moves into this beautiful sort of isolated home that's actually called Il Mare, that was built by his father. He didn't really have a relationship very much with his father at the end, so it's sort of an odd feeling to be in this house that his dad had built. But, it's a beautiful home and he decides to build a life there. Suddenly, though, he starts receiving these random letters in his mailbox. They just start appearing. It's not like the mailman comes and there's the letter like you would normally expect. No, they're just there. And it's from a woman, and he can't really tell who she is or what's going on with the letters, but he grows attached to this correspondence. And more letters continue to come, and they continue to read one another's messages. And you discover, and this is in the synopsis, it's not a spoiler, that they are both living in Il Mare, but at different times. Now, if this sounds familiar, that's because it probably is. This is the movie upon which The Lake House, starring Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock, is based. So this is the original work. I actually had seen this before I saw Lake House, and I remember watching Lake House and being like, this seems very familiar. So it's a very, very good movie. If you are familiar with The Lake House, this is not going to be a departure from the basic storyline, but it is interesting because the characters do have cultural differences. You will have some little tweaks to the story, and it's always interesting to me to see how an actor approaches a character, in that they might have a lot of similarities, the Keanu Reeves character versus the Lee Jung-jae character, but there's just enough that's different. So Lee Jung-jae is the same as the actor who was in Squid Game on Netflix, by the way. So if you watch Squid Game, he's the main actor. He plays the main character in Il Mare. Very different stories, like outlandishly different stories, but he's a great actor and he does a phenomenal job in this, just like he did in Squid Game. Anyway, this story definitely is a bit more traditional in that you do have these two lovers who, find the commonalities within the letters and going back and forth and communicating that way. But I like that element of time travel with fantasy, and how are they going to get together? How does this even work? Does it make sense? Why, if they have such a connection, don't they already live together? If they're at different times, shouldn't he have caught up with her at that point? So it's really about the mystery that's going on, in addition to the time travel, in addition to the fantasy elements, in addition to the romance. So you've got a lot of stuff going on, and I don't know, it just makes this really magical film. And I enjoy that sort of thing when you have these little extra touches to what might be a more straightforward love story. You know, it just gives it a little bit of oomph that you might not be expecting otherwise. So if you are interested in a romance that does have those kinds of elements to it, you might want to check out Il Mare. It's available on Hoopla, like I mentioned, and it is lovely. Okay, final recommendation for the week. This is available on Canopy, and it is 2022's Mr. Malcolm's List. This movie is so delightful. It's perfect for anyone who enjoys period piece romances, Regency era romance, Jane Austen style storytelling, the Bridgerton series in particular on Netflix. It's just so much fun, and you know, it employs a lot of your classic romantic tropes, but with a little bit extra. So much like Bridgerton, Mr. Malcolm's List employs colorblind casting, which on one level extends accessibility in a mammoth kind of way. Obviously, Regency era England did not see a ton of people of color in these titled roles, but by opening up casting to people of color, you definitely make certain characters much more relatable to your audience. But besides that, they've also cast some ridiculously talented actors like Zawe Ashton. She's amazing. I've seen her in a couple of plays, and she's just brilliant. Frida Pinto is in this. The acting is just absolutely top notch. But beside that, you just have a really great storyline, and it just feels like this perfect match with the era. So Julia Thistlethwaite has been jilted by this very eligible bachelor, Mr. Malcolm. She is ridiculed by society, and she ends up discovering that she's been jilted not just because they don't mesh well, which would be one thing, but because she doesn't have these characteristics that he has listed. Like, he actually has a physical list of characteristics that's like check off points. And she's furious, rightly so. She calls on her friend Selena Dalton to come to town and convinces Selena to pretend to be in love with Mr. Malcolm. And then once he falls in love with her, to spin it around on him, and then to provide her own list of characteristics that he falls down on. Of course, this is no surprise, and it's not a spoiler. Selena and Mr. Malcolm end up, you know, really getting to know one another during their courtship, and really sort of making a connection, and everything sort of snowballs from there. There are hurt feelings, there are lies and misunderstandings. I mean, it's so Austen, it's kind of ridiculous, but it's so enjoyable. I really, really did adore this movie. I'm a huge Austen fan. I adore, like, most period piece romances that have elements of humor mixed in with the drama as well, and this is just perfect when it comes to those kinds of things. Besides the acting and the chemistry between the actors, it's a really lovely film. The production values are fantastic. The costuming is just gorgeous. You've got phenomenal cinematography. It's just altogether a really well executed movie. And if you are someone who enjoys those kinds of stories, if you do like Bridgerton for the colorblind casting factor, if you just enjoy a really good Regency romance, make sure you check out Mr. Malcolm's List. It's probably my pick of the week. Honestly, I liked it just that much, and I loved all of the movies that I've recommended this week, by the by. So again, if you're interested in period piece romance with just a little bit extra, make sure you check out Mr. Malcolm's List, available on Canopy. All right, so those were my recommendations for this week. If you happen to have any recommendations for romances with a little bit extra, make sure you comment with those recs below. I'm always looking for movies to watch, so I adore it when people share their thoughts. If you have any recommendations for themes you'd like to see in the future, make sure you comment with those too. Definitely love help with that. As always, thank you so, so much for joining me. I really love putting these lists together. It gives me a chance to delve into our catalog. And, even if none of the recommendations today spoke to you, check out our catalog services because there are thousands of movies available. You will 100% find something you'll like. Again, thank you so much for joining me this week, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.